Yes, everyday superpower signing in for a bizzle. We're going to stay on the topic of dating, body language. For all you lovers out there, all you romantics out there, whether you be successful or hopeless, it goes out to you. So you get a little more insight, a little more information. We were talking about pacifying behaviours, self-soothing behaviours, and I might have, crossed this slightly in that talk, but let's have a look into this in a little more depth, right? So we're going to talk about erotic touch to oneself, autoerotic touch. That is a form of self-touch that still is a self-soothing, pacifying behaviour, right? So if you haven't watched the video, which you should do, and you should have looked through the catalogue to understand these terms to their fullest extent. This is a little later down into the whole everyday superpower project. So have a look at the catalogue of videos, right? So when you self-soothe or pacify, it's a subconscious behaviour as to where we tend to rub or fidget or relieve ourselves of nervous energy through some form of stimulation or, movement, to just release and relieve ourselves of that nervous energy that's been built up. We touch ourselves by scratching our head, massaging our forehead, touching our lips, rubbing our ears, touching our shoulder, shaking our foot. You know where I'm coming from? We find ways, and we all have our own different mannerisms in order to relieve it, but overall, given there's billions of people on the planet, a lot of people end up sharing the same patterns of behaviour, so you start to make sense of it when you start to see it in more and more people, right? Now, this is the self-touch, but in a sensual or erotic way, in response to you, or in response to a thought, but we're going to hope it's you, considering you are in this metaphorical date right now, sitting across the table. And, as always, I am a man, so I speak with a little more depth and understanding on a man looking at a woman. Purely is, if I didn't have experience within this field personally, who am I to tell you what to look out for and whether it makes sense, right? So you're gazing into each other's eyes and you say something which makes her feel a little hot inside, right? From there, she may raise her hand and, without knowing, just start to rub on her neck. And when I say without knowing, she consciously might be considering what you've said, but subconsciously, the hand has come to allure you in, not only attracting you and your eyesight to her neck, an erogenous zone, somewhere she might want to be kissed and loved and touched. And she's looking at you and projecting that feeling through her own hands, right? I want you to touch me here, so have a look here and look at what I'm doing. I'm looking at you and my mind is thinking what my body is producing. It's non-verbal communication. I might not speak this verbally, but my body will tell you exactly, right? So a slow and sure and sexual rubbing of the neck. Now this is different to a anxious or nervous, paranoia, self-soothing of the neck. There is a difference, and what I'm going to tell you, as opposed to going into the depth of to what separates them, I'm going to ask you to use your intuition, because that's the most powerful tool you've got. And when it comes to you assessing and analysing, you will be very surprised at how often you are right. Okay? So, do your thing. Engage in conversation. Pay attention to her erogenous zones and pay attention to where the movement attracts your attention to. So, if her hand brushes against her breasts, her cleavage, she might be attracting your attention there on a subconscious basis. You know, have a look at her outfit. Have a look as to whether that amplifies, concentrates, and exposes that area to you, and that is why she's trying to raise your attention in doing so. Another area is the wrist. The touching of the wrists, the rubbings of the wrists. Our wrists are covered in nerve endings, right? Such as most of these areas we touch subconsciously to pacify ourselves. That's the reason we do it, because these nerve endings send off feel-good hormones to the brain. So the woman could look at you and start rubbing on her wrists slowly and surely. Now, one of the things are, if the wrists are exposed, then she's in a submissive state anyway, because that's exposing her vital, life-giving areas to you, a potential predator, if needs be, right? Such as the neck. When we expose the neck and the wrists, it shows confidence, and confidence within submission, being the submissive party, alright? When you speak to people and you see them rolling their sleeves down and covering themselves a little bit more, or zipping up jackets and so on and so forth, when it doesn't necessarily seem right, what they're doing is they're shielding and defending themselves from you, okay? Or the conversation or the idea that they have had. So pay attention to that. If it's exposed, you are in a good position as far as the date going. She's not closed off on you. This is open body language. This is brilliant. So pay attention. Now, the thing is, I've used, sensitive, feminine and just like sexualized areas purposefully. This can also, relate to her essentially touching anywhere. It's so mad how it all flows together and how you have to look at the big picture. So let's say, for example, she raises her hand and starts rubbing the back of her head, okay? And you think, well, this isn't what I've been told about sensual behaviours. I've heard about the neck and the wrist and attracting me to the breasts and the behind and so on and so forth. She's just rubbing the back of her head. That's not very sexual. But you have to pay attention to how she's looking at you, what she's indicating, what she's hinting, and then look at the big picture, because what's happening is that the armpits are now exposed, releasing pheromones, okay? A lot of people, aside the fetishists, I believe, a lot of people don't pay attention to the armpits as a, indication of, an indication of sexual... I don't know the word I'm looking for, but you know exactly what I mean. A lot of people don't pay attention to that sort of stuff. Armpits. But biologically speaking, the fragrance and the scent, the natural scent that we might not consciously pick up or be able to smell, our primitive sense is able to do so. That's why I personally don't wear aftershave. I don't wear any sort of superficial fragrance. I stay clean, but I allow my natural scent to do its thing, because that's the whole point. So I don't shroud it. I don't mask it with the smell of petals or masculine things, So, auto-sensual touch. Pay attention to where she is touching. Pay attention as to whether she's doing it consciously or unconsciously. So if she's rubbing against her breast or so forth, is that subconscious behaviour? Is that outside of her awareness, does it seem? Or does it seem like she's intentionally hinting to you? So work that one out. and just understand you're doing the right thing. If the individual is nervous or anxious in any degree of way as to where they have to self-soothe and pacify, that's not a bad thing whilst dating. All right, nervous energy, anxious energy is not a bad thing whilst creating relationship and communication. It's completely natural, and as far as dating goes, you could be on the right path there. I'm signing out. Everyday Superpower.